It's wrong. It would be stupid. It would be lying, actually. Mohamed did not mean police officers. Moses did not mean police officers. We may not have any new meanings. We must use the meanings known in the 1st century AD for the Bible, or that is for the Gospel, and the 1st century of the Hijra for the Quran. Now let us look at what the Quran says about embryology. Oh, sorry, got the wrong thing. It has been said that the idea of the embryo developing through stages is a modern one, and that the Quran is anticipating modern embryology by depicting differing stages. In a pamphlet entitled Highlights of Human Embryology by Keith Moore, Dr. Moore claims the realization that the embryo develops in stages in the uterus was not discussed or illustrated until the 15th century. We will weigh this claim by considering the meaning of the Arabic words used by the Quran, and secondly, by examining the historical situation leading up to and surrounding the Quran. We will start by looking at the main words using the word alaka, main verses. The Arabic word alaka in the singular, or alaq as the collective plural, is used 6 times. In the Surah of the Resurrection, Al-Qiyamah, 75, 35 to 39, we read, "Was he man, not a drop of sperm ejaculated? Then he became alaka, and God shaped and formed and made of him a pair, the male and the female." In the Surah of the Believer, Al-Mu'min, 40:67, it says, "He it is who created you from dust, then from a sperm drop, then from a leech-like clot, alaka, then brings you forth as a child, that perhaps you may understand." In the Surah of the Pilgrimage, Al-Hajj 22:5, it says, "O mankind, if you have doubt about the resurrection, consider that we have created you from dust, then from a drop of seed, then from a clot, alaka, then from a little lump of flesh, shapely and shapeless." And finally, the fullest treatment is in the Surah of the Believers, Al-Mu'minun, 23:12 to 14, which reads, "Verily, we created man from a product of wet earth, then placed him as a drop of seed in a safe lodging. Then we fashioned the drop a clot, alaka, and of the clot we fashioned a lump, and of the lump we fashioned bones, and we clothed the bones with meat. Then we produced it as another creation." And here you have the stages according to the Quran. Nutfa, sperm; alaka, clot; mudagha, piece of meat; adam, bones; and the 5th stage, dressing the bones with muscles. Over the last 100+ years, this word alaka has been translated as follows. There's 10 translations here. I'm not going to read them all. 3 are in French, where it says un gommot de sang, or a clot of blood. 5 versions are English, where it's either clot or leech-like clot. 1 version is in Indonesian, at the bottom there, segumpal darah, lump of or clot of blood. And the last one is Farsi, khun basta, a clot of blood. As every reader who has studied human reproduction will realize, there is no stage as a clot during the formation of a fetus. So this is a very major scientific problem. In the dictionaries of Wer and Abdanur, the only meanings given for alaka in this feminine singular are clot and leech. And in North Africa, both of these meanings are still used. Many patients have come to me to ask for a clot to be removed from their throat. And many women have come to me and told me their period didn't come. When I say, "I'm sorry, I can't give you medicine to bring your period because I believe that's a baby," they would say, "Mazel dim, it's still blood." So they were understanding these ideas of the Quran. Lastly, we must consider the first verses which came to Mohammed in Mecca. These are found in the 96th surah called alaq, clots, from the very word that we're studying. In 96:1-2 we read, "Proclaim, in the name of your Lord who created man from alaq." Here the word is in the collective plural. This form of the word can have other meanings because alaq is also the derived verbal noun of the verb alika. The verbal noun usually corresponds to the gerund in English, as in the sentence, swimming is fun. Therefore, we could expect it to mean hanging or clinging or adhering. But the 10 translators listed above have all used clot, or congealed blood, in this verse too. In spite of the number and qualifications of these translators who use the word clot, the French Dr. Maurice Bucaille has sharp words for them. He writes, "What is more likely to mislead the inquiring reader is once again the problem of vocabulary. The majority of translations describe, for example, man's formation from a blood clot. A statement of this kind is totally unacceptable to scientists specializing in the field. This shows how great the importance of an association between linguistic and scientific knowledge is when it comes to grasping the meaning of Quranic statements on reproduction." Put in other words, Bucaille is saying, nobody has translated the Quran correctly until I, Dr. Bucaille, came along. How does Dr. Bucaille think that it should be translated? He proposes that instead of clot, the word alaka should be translated as something which clings, which would refer to the fetus being attached to the uterus through the placenta. But as all you ladies who've been pregnant know, the thing which clings doesn't stop its clinging to become chewed meat. It keeps on being the thing which clings, which is attached by the placenta for 8.5 months. Thirdly, these verses say that the chewed meat becomes bones, and then the bones are covered with muscle. They give the impression that first the skeleton is formed, and then it is clothed with flesh, and Dr. Bucaille knows perfectly well that this is not true. The muscles and the cartilage precursors of the bones start forming from the somite at the same time. At the end of the 8th week, there are only a few centers of ossification started, but the fetus is already able to make muscular movement. In a personal letter from Dr. T.W. Sadler, who's associate professor in anatomy and the author of Langman's Medical Embryology, Dr. Sadler states, at the 8th week post-fertilization, the ribs would be cartilaginous, not bone, and muscles would be present. Also at this time, ossification would just begin. Muscles would be capable of some movement at 8 weeks. It's always better to have 2 witnesses, so we shall see what Dr. Keith Moore has to say about the development of bones and muscles in his book, The Developing Human. Extracted from chapters 15 and 17, we find the following information. The skeletal system develops from mesoderm. The limb muscles develop in the limb buds that are derived from this somatic mesoderm. We see that here on this slide. It's difficult perhaps to see, but there's the limb bud. And then here there's just a little bit of cartilage with the muscles around. Here there's more cartilage. And this is the whole, the bones are formed and in the form of bones, but it's all cartilage. No bones yet. This second slide shows how it forms. Here's the cartilage. Now, just the bone looks like cartilage. And then it starts to have some calcium deposited. And then it starts to have ossification and bone formed. As the bone models form, I want to go back to this. As the bone models form, myoblasts develop a large muscle mass in each limb bud, separating into extensor and flexor muscles. In other words, the limb muscles develop simultaneously from the mesenchyme surrounding the developing bones. So there's the cartilage, and here are the muscles developing around the cartilage. During a personal conversation with Dr. Moore, I showed him Dr. Sadler's statement, and he agreed that it was absolutely valid. Conclusion, Dr. Sadler and Dr. Moore agreed. There is no time when calcified bones have been formed and then the muscles are placed around them. The muscles are there several weeks before there are calcified bones, rather than being added around previously formed bones as the Quran states. The Quran is in complete error here. The problems are far from being solved. Let us return to alaqa. Dr. Moore also has a suggestion. He says another verse in the Quran refers to the leech-like appearance